touchdown. And he flips the ball to Rowney to do with what he would.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another video. Today we're going to get into the deep sleeper tight ends video, where I'm going to give you guys 5 tight ends that you could pick up in the last 4 or 5 rounds of the draft, 11th, 12th round and beyond. Add to your team and use them as steady tight ends that you can get for absolutely nothing. Now, a lot of people will say, why the steady tight ends? Why not try to get one of the big guys early on? This year, one of the big guys, Brock Bowers from last year, McBride's still up there, George Kittle, those are the top 3 consensus tight ends right now. Well, I'm going to tell you guys why. I've always had this philosophy of just bypassing the tight ends. Let the tight ends be the most irrelevant position on your football team, on your fantasy football team rather, and fill out your other needs. Running back, receivers, get an ace quarterback, but let the tight ends just let them fall to the wayside, okay? When you pick a tight end, 1, 2, 3, even a 4th round, I mean, you're expecting a lot of production, and there's just not a lot of tight ends out there that'll ever get the same production of a receiver that can go out there and get 11 to 1,200 yards, a running back that can go out there and get 12 to 1,300 yards, or even a quarterback that can throw for 40 touchdowns or have 40 touchdowns on the ground, like a Lamar, Jalen Hurts, etc. So I'm going to give you guys just a couple, before we get into the 5 tight ends that I like, I want to give you guys a couple stats, basic stats, just to sort of verify my point. I mean, we'll go back just the last couple years. So 2023, Travis Kelce was a first-round pick. If you wanted him, you got to get in the first round. And even though Travis Kelce didn't necessarily have a bad year, he got hurt to start the year and didn't even finish with 1,000 yards. He was at like 900-something yards. And this is a first-round pick, guys. I mean, you can't really mess up a first-round pick. I mean, it's not to say that if you screw up your first-round pick, you're completely cooked, but at the same time, you want your first-round pick to at least have 1,000 yards. That's a benchmark. That's not that's not asking for a lot. It's a first-round pick. You're talking about picking him with the Gritties, picking him with, CeeDee Lamb and Bijan and guys like that. I mean, I don't know if that in that year, from what I remember, those are pretty much the same guys. I mean, as they're going this year, it doesn't really change that much, which is why I made the point last episode of, hey, study these rookies, because the big guys are still the big guys, the small guys are still the small guys. It is what it is. But in that particular case, I mean, you completely you got robbed a little bit if you pick Kelce in the first round, where in 2023 I was really big on a guy like Sam Laporta, who you could have gotten the 12th round, 11th round, 10th round, whatever. You could have got him for basically nothing, and he finished with pretty much the same amount of production as Travis Kelce, if not better, because he had more touchdowns. So just goes to show, that's one point right there. Don't waste your first, second, third round pick on a tight end. Another guy from that year, Mark Andrews, who's really, Mark Andrews has been costing your team. I mean, if you've been picking him these last 2 years, Mark Andrews was around a 2-3 turn guy, as they say, 2-3 turn, basically end of the second, early third. I know a lot of you guys are in the fantasy community, you know what that means, but we tried to do these episodes for the people who are just getting involved to get their knowledge up to par. So just to explain that, if you don't mind. But he didn't even get to 600 yards. Okay? Didn't even get to 600 yards. As a second, third round pick, that's a complete bust. Okay? That'll sink your team into the poorhouse. So definitely not a guy you want. Now let's go back to, or let's move ahead, I should say, to last year. There was a ton of tight end busts last year, a ton. The only player who wasn't a bust was Trey McBride. Trey McBride had an outstanding season, and he didn't even, it took him like 15 games to get a freaking touchdown. He didn't have a touchdown all those games, and he still, was a great player for your fantasy team, consistent every single week. But even as good as he was, there were still some faults there, and I was a big fan of Trey McBride. Trey McBride was also someone who I was big on in the 2023 season, where he was basically you could have gotten Trey McBride in like the last pick of your best ball drafts, and I ended up doing that and made a little bit of hay doing that. Unfortunately, didn't win anything. But anyway, 2024, let's start off with Sam Laporta. This is what the consensus does. Once a sleeper, that they see out of nowhere, Puka Nacua, Sam Laporta, boom, they shock the world. They move them all the way up to the top. First, second, third round pick, they're all the way at the top. They're at the top of their position. And what do you know? What comes up must go down. and Sam Laporta completely busted if you picked him in the third round. Now, he ended up, for his season-long production, it was just a little bit worse than what it was the previous year, guys. But here's the thing with fantasy, and this is not even just tight end. This is overall, guys. Okay? Look at the value. Look at the value. Okay? Look at your ROI on Sam Laporta in 2023. You got tremendous ROI. Okay? In 2024, you got negative ROI. You were in 2024. You were expecting, if you drafted Sam Laporta, you were expecting not only to have the 2023 production, but even give me a little bit more. Give me over 1,000 yards. Maybe give me 11, 12 touchdowns. That didn't even come close to happening. So even though Sam Laporta didn't really have a bad year in terms of reality football for fantasy, he had a horrible year. Okay, because that wasn't even close to what you were expecting. Another pick, Travis Kelce. What do you know? 800 yards, 3 touchdowns. Not too good. Okay, third round pick. You need a little bit more than that, especially on the touchdown end. Now, Mark Andrews, he actually down the line, I will say he played pretty well, and he ended up getting 11 touchdowns, but didn't even have 700 yards. And through the first half of the season, he was killing your team if you guys picked him in the fourth round. I was completely off Mark Andrews just because to me, he's been very overvalued the past few years. I actually think this year he's sort of correctly valued. I think he is down. I'm on between like 6th round, 8th round, or something around there. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but I'll be corrected in the edit when I edit this. So, but I do know he is correctly ranked this year. But the last couple of years, I think he was very overvalued. And a 4th round pick to basically be a waiver guy at some point during the year, because that was up for consideration for a lot of you guys out there, and I don't blame you. I mean, that's not a good look. Okay, you want your 4th round picks in your lineup consistently. And then another guy who everyone was big on, he was basically, I saw him going in, he was more of a 3-4 turn guy, but we'll just say a 4th round pick to be safe. Dalton Kincaid. Where was he last year? I mean, that was kind of one of the biggest. I mean, I'm not really a Bills expert. I don't watch a lot of Bills tape. But if anybody out there is a Bills fan, let me know what the hell happened to Dalton Kincaid. He was on a milk carton last year, plain and simple. He didn't even have 500 yards. Okay, if you drafted him, your team went to the poorhouse. There's no way you made the playoffs if you had Dalton Kincaid on your fantasy team. So what's my philosophy on tight ends? Basically, what I'm going to do, guys, and I'll talk about draft strategy in future videos, but not only do I bypass the tight end until the later rounds, but just grab 2 tight ends late. Okay, take 2 flyers on 2 guys and see if something could work out between one of them. You only need 1 tight end. You're never going to use a tight end in a flex unless you have Brock Bowers. I mean, but you'll never use a tight end in a flex. If you're in a tight end premium, you might use a tight end in a flex. And in that case, don't listen to my strategy at all, because then I'll be open to taking Brock Bowers in tight end premium, 1.5, 2.0, whatever. It's a tight end premium. So go ahead, take Brock Bowers, take Trey McBride. That's a completely different circumstance. Just to clarify, I'm talking about the standard 1 point PPR for 1 point for the tight ends, 1 point for the receivers. But even if you are in a tight end premium league, this episode is still going to be a much of a value to you, because I'm going to give you tight ends that could be sleepers. And if you find a sleeper tight end in a tight end premium league, that's going to be a huge, huge benefit to your team. So without further ado, let's get into the 5 tight ends. Number 1 that I have on my list, call me a homer or whatnot, but Jake Ferguson, I think, is very, very undervalued this year in fantasy. You can get him. He's 140th overall. It's just basically 11th to 12th round. Coming off what was an injury-riddled season and just an entirely messy season for the Cowboys offense. Dak goes down. The O-line is just riddled with injuries. And Ferguson, to me, just never really could come back from that statistically. Once he got hurt, he had a leg injury, concussion, and completely rattled him. And then to come back into the lineup, and Cooper Rush is a quarterback who, in my opinion, really, I know he's going to be backing up Lamar this year, but I really don't think Cooper Rush is an NFL quarterback. Just the way there's no zip on the ball whatsoever with him. But it's just nothing ever benefited Jake Ferguson last year. Now, in 2023, when the offense was rolling, everybody was healthy. Dak was healthy, playing in his A game. Jake Ferguson was a top 10 tight end overall in fantasy. Had 800 yards and about 6 touchdowns, I believe. Don't have the stats in front of me, but just remembering off the top of my head, he was a very, very productive player last year. And again, another guy to supplement that point in 2023. I recommended him on the waiver wire. On the waiver wire, okay? And you got tremendous value off of that. So that's even another thing. I mean, Joe Smith was a waiver wire guy technically in some, traditional season-long leagues. In best ball, you had to pick him, but there might be a guy on the waiver wire, Taysom Hill, for Christ's sake, that is just going to come out of the woodworks and will be productive. Very rarely you'll find that at other positions, guys, so keep that in mind. But one of my top things with Ferguson going into this year, contract year. Okay, guys, when the refrigerator's a little low and these players need to get paid, you're going to see motivation like you've never seen it before. Okay, circle I want you guys to go through basically the 2022 draft, because that's usually, when the rookies come to the end of the 4-year contracts. We're in 2025, so 2022, 2023, 2024, this is the 4th year of their contract. And then look at the there might be some guys from the 21 class that are going into their 5th year option year. So that's also on the table. But make sure you look at all the guys going into contract year, guys. When they're going into contract year, they got to get paid. This is their profession. Okay? This is everything to them. Beyond the Super Bowls, beyond the fantasy points, beyond everything, these guys' number one objectives is to get that bag. All right? And I'm not saying that as there are some guys out there that only play for the bag, but I'm not saying that for every player. But every player is trying to get the bag. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And the number one way you get the bag is you ball out in your contract year when you're about to renegotiate at the table for your deal. So this is very, very important when it comes to picking fantasy players, because you can get tremendous motivation and value behind some of the players that, first 2-3 years just not too good or coming off a down year. They're going to have a lot of motivation coming in this year to make sure they prove to themselves and their agents and their teams that they're top of the line guys, so they can get a top of the line contract. Jake Ferguson's going into a contract year. I'm going to bet on him this year. Dak is going to be back. He'll be healthy. They're going to have 2 outside receivers to take some pressure off of that middle with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. The run game should be a little bit better. I just think the offensive line as a whole is going to be a lot better. Getting Booker in there in first round, that's just going to solidify a lot of things. The running backs, it's whatever. We'll talk about that another day. But I think Jake Ferguson, he's a starting tight end. He's going to be on the field. The tight end they picked behind him, Schoonmaker, is a complete bust. So he'll be on pretty much every single play. Okay, and he already has a trusted connection with Dak Prescott. And you're getting a starting tight end, guys. The 3rd target on the Cowboys for nothing. 11th to 12th round pick. Okay, that's a very, very good value. I'll get on Jake Ferguson. Number 2 on the list, I have Cade Otton from the Tampa Bay Bucks, so you can get in the 14th, 15th round, ranked 180th overall on Underdog right now, and another guy that's entering a contract year. Something, again, very important, just like we talked about with Ferguson. Another guy that you want to take note of, that he's going to have to ball out if he wants a big payday. Let's not forget what kind of production Cade Otton was able to produce during last year. He only finished with 600 yards, 4 touchdowns, which wasn't bad considering you got him for next to nothing. Averaged 8 points per game and finished 13th in scoring amongst tight ends, and he missed a couple games last year towards the end of the year. But really the part that I want to focus on with Cade Otton is his production once one of the big 2 guys went down. Now, Ibuka is going to be in there now. Bucky Irving's obviously the guy that takes a lot of, pass catches out of the backfield. So, there's a lot of mouths to feed, plain and simple, when it comes to Tampa. And, we really don't know what this offense is going to be this year, considering they're making some change at coordinator since their coordinator left to go coach the Jaguars. So that is something that's a little of the unknown right now. But when Mike Evans and Godwin weren't there for that 3-game stretch, he had 14 points per game, 24.6, and then 17.7 points in each 3 of those games in the middle of the year last year. Now, let's keep in mind, Mike Evans is getting a little bit older now, and he'll be healthy this year and all, but this is a player that's entering his 11th year in the NFL, guys. An injury can happen to him at any moment. And we don't wish injuries on here, but I'm just stating the facts. It is what it is. And there's already proof last year that there's a little volatility there. And then Godwin's injury was pretty bad last year. So who knows what Godwin's health status is going to be coming into this year. That could have been a big reason why they ended up going and picking Igbukah. So, McMillan is obviously another guy that they have as a depth piece that he stepped in and actually did a pretty solid job for them. So there are a lot of mouths to feed in Tampa, but when it comes to being that big target over the middle, there's really no competition. Cade Otton is that guy. And I don't think he'll have that same, that production that he had in that 3-game stretch. That was the best tight end in fantasy football for that month or so. It was very hard to find a tight end better than Cade Otton at that time. So even if he could sniff that, that'll automatically blow his value out of proportion for what he is. And you're basically getting him for nothing, guys. Nothing. All these players that I'm telling you about right now, you're getting these guys for nothing. So we're looking for, the hope is that we get an explosive output. We get a Laporta, we get a Brock Bowers. That's a dream and a hope, guys. Okay. I'm not going to promise that with any 5 of these guys. Maybe one of these guys will have some sort of an output. Maybe one of these guys will have 1,000 yards. I don't know who. I'm going to hope someone I pick on my team. If I could tell you who, it'd be easy, but that's kind of the difficulty with fantasy overall. But just get 2 guys that you could stash on your bench and just play by the matchups in and out. This guy has a good matchup, play him this week. This guy has a good matchup, play him that week. And rotate these guys to be steady options. 8 to 10 points per game options is what we're looking for, considering that we're putting 0 investment and we're going to have sufficient depth at our running back position. If you guys are in 1-point PPR, 3 receivers, or even half PPR with 3 receivers, you're going to have 5 receivers through the first 8 to 9 rounds, solid receivers. So we're going to put a lot of our stock in that and just let the tight ends come to us. On top of that, guys, we've already talked about the other rookie tight ends earlier on, Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland, who are a little bit further ahead of these guys, but those are also some guys I could definitely see having some explosive output. And I might as well get into my 3rd favorite rookie tight end, who I see a ton of potential for, and that's Mason Taylor on the Jets. I'm a huge fan of Mason Taylor, guys. I thought he was a borderline first-round player. He was a guy that I was considering putting in that top 8 rookies video as like a honorable mention type guy, but he just didn't make the cut in my opinion. But very, very good player when I watched him at LSU. Obviously, son of a Hall of Fame player, Jason Taylor. If you guys watch football in the 2000s, you know who that is. Hall of Fame player. So he already knows what to expect in the pros. And then on top of that, he's going to be playing with Aaron Glenn, who I don't know if Aaron Glenn and Jason Taylor were teammates at some point. Taylor did play for the Jets at some point. I don't think it was when Aaron Glenn was there. But regardless, there's some sort of relationship there, which is why he got drafted in the 2nd round to the Jets. Just looking at the player overall, very, very clutch. It just felt like he was very dependable. Everything you could rely on this guy, and you could tell that he was a 3-star recruit, but he was a 5-star mentality. Okay, he knew what it take to play in a professional level, and that's because of his dad. His uncle is also Zach Thomas, who was also a linebacker, a teammate of Jason Taylor. To have 2 Hall of Fame players in your corner is a very, very huge advantage that a lot of players don't. And getting that sort of training and that sort of coaching at a very young age, that's going to set him up far, far apart from a lot of rookies. When it comes to the player himself, very good athlete in his own right, dependable, as we talked about. His hands are very dependable, adjusts really well to the bad throws. Nussmeier, in my opinion, I don't really see a great quarterback there, if I'm being honest. I know he was being talked about as a top prospect. I'm not really a huge fan of him so far. Maybe something changes there, but I thought there were a lot of throws that were, wide up. There weren't a lot of throws on the numbers, and he made some really nice adjustments to those throws. Not scared of anything. There was a lot of times they were asking him to go over the middle. Linebackers were going to come down and just crush him, and he wasn't scared at that at all. He just didn't flinch at anything. And probably my favorite statistic about Mason Taylor, every single game he played at LSU, he had a catch. Every single game, from the time he stepped on campus to the time he got drafted, he had a catch every single game. Okay, that's not, it doesn't sound like an impressive statistic, but you're talking about, guys, even when he was a freshman and he didn't have, that team when he came in as a freshman was pretty damn stacked. There was a lot of receivers on that team. We talked about how, Jack Besh had to leave and go to TCU because he couldn't get any burner. I mean, it's very hard to get a target on that team with that sort of, array of receiving talent. So for him to get a catch as a freshman every single game and carry that over, I mean, that shows a lot of consistency and dependability, and that's what you want in your tight ends. Now, looking at the Jets depth chart, there's not any competition. I mean, Jeremy Ruckert, I think, is the backup behind him, who he's been on that team for a little while now, really hasn't done anything. I think Mason Taylor is going to step right in and be the starter. To me, this is probably the closest prospect we're going to get out of these five guys to a 2023 Sam Laporta. Okay, this is, I have a little bit of a hunch with Mason Taylor when it comes to that, and I don't know if he'll have 800 yards, 10 touchdowns, because we're talking about Justin Fields as a quarterback, and we know he has his own issues, so that I don't know if we'll see that sort of production, but I do think Mason Taylor is going to be a starter right away. That I'm very confident about, and the catches will come sooner rather than later. So keep an eye out for Mason Taylor, guys. I think this guy's pro ready at a very young age, and he is one of my sleepers overall. A guy that I would also get on for Dynasty as well, if Dynasty drafts are still going on for you guys. A couple more guys now. We'll finish off the list. My next guy, not an exciting prospect, but a guy that I do think has a lot of potential, and that's Brenton Strange from the Jaguars. Second-round pick from a couple of years ago. That's now going to be a first year as a true starter. Evan Ingram is now departed as the Jaguars cut him in a cap casualty. He went to the Broncos, I believe, so that's going to leave Brenton Strange with a wide open opportunity to be the go-to underneath target for Trevor Lawrence. And look, as much as I make fun of Sunshine, as I call him, Trevor Lawrence, the reality is that he doesn't throw the ball down the field. I mean, he just, look at the numbers, guys. He averaged, we talked about this last year, he averaged less yards per attempt than Danny Dimes. I mean, we're not talking, this guy doesn't even average 7 yards per attempt. So he is a true underneath thrower, and Evan Ingram got a fair share of that last year. Now, in the games that Ingram missed, which he did have some games he missed early on due to some injury, Brenton Strange did get a little bit of a taste for some starting reps, and it wasn't blown away production like Cade Otton did. If I have it in front of me, points per game without Ingram, 8, 8.2, 3, 10.4, 12.8, 3, and 8. So overall, just a very steady 8 to 10 point per game. But, that kind of fits what we're looking for in these late tight ends. I mean, he's going to get the targets, which is most important. So he had an opportunity, and you hope now with, Travis Hunter on one side, Brian Thomas Jr. on the other, those guys are going to take the top off the defense and make it easier for Brenton Strange to be an underneath target, and then on top of that, maybe even be a red zone target. So that'll be a place where you could really make your hay, but you're getting him for absolutely nothing, guys. Okay, you're getting him for absolutely nothing. So that's really not only there's two consensus with all the players that we talked about right now. Number one, you're getting these guys for nothing. You're expecting steady production, nothing more, unless, if they want to give you more, great. I'd make it even more of a slam dunk, but nothing less, more importantly. And these guys are the clear-cut number one tight ends on their teams in reality football. Jake Ferguson is the number one tight end on the Cowboys. Cade Otton is the number one tight end on the Bucks. Mason Taylor is going to be the number one tight end on the Jets once he beats out that weak competition. Brenton Strange is the number one tight end on the Jags. Okay, so we know these guys are the bona fide starters, where at this point of the draft, you're getting the number 3 targets on receivers, possibly backup running backs. So that's another way I like to look at it when it comes to the upside that some of these tight ends provide in a fantasy draft late. Now, my last player, he's not the number one tight end when it comes to his team. I mean, there is one guy in front of him, but I think he will eventually be the number one tight end, and that's Jatavion Sanders on the Panthers. Tommy Tremble is slated to start ahead of him, but Tommy Tremble's always been more of a run-blocking sort of tight end, a really good run-blocking tight end, but Jatavion Sanders, in my opinion, is going to offer a lot more as a pass catcher than Tommy Tremble. big time 5-star athlete coming out of high school, going into Texas. Could have honestly got drafted at defensive end. That's how athletic of a prospect he was, but stick on the offensive side of the ball and played tight end. Has this modern day Jonnu Smith type build to him, a tight end that could really take the top off. And that's a rare build that, that's what Kyle Pitts, that was the big hype around Kyle Pitts. He was a vertical threat tight end. It just really hasn't meshed in the NFL for some reason that we just don't know. I mean, maybe the guy flat out can't play, but Jonnu Smith has shown he's had some big time production in the NFL. Not consistently, but, he was a top 5 tight end fantasy-wise last year. And Ja'Tavion Sanders has that same exact physical profile. And really a pass target that got going a little bit towards the end of last year when Bryce Young started to step up his game a little bit. And a guy that Bryce Young could really need. I mean, Bryce Young just needs a security blanket over the middle, and Ja'Tavion Sanders, I think, can be that guy and also provide some sort of deep threat for the defense. I mean, Ted McMillan is going to help that a little bit as well. Leggett I thought he was going to be more of a deep threat, but he really just hasn't worked out so far. We'll see if he changes a year or two. He's still young, so these 3 guys overall could be the top 3 receivers for the Panthers. I don't really see, the guys like Coker and Tommy Tremble. I don't really see those guys being too big of receiving threats. I do think they'll be involved by default, just because they're going to start. But Ja'Tavion Sanders, I think, will eventually pass him on the depth chart. He's the only true pass-catching tight end out of the 3 tight ends that are on the Panthers depth chart right now. And if I'm being honest, I when I look at Ja'Tavion from a prospect, I think he came out a little too early. I think he should have stayed an extra year at Texas, developed his game a little bit more. He's still only 22 years old, so he's basically a rookie this year, if we're being honest. But where I see the high-end potential with Ja'Tavion Sanders, if he can eventually work into this role, he could be a red zone demon. This guy could be a 10-touchdown-a-year type player. And I want to, until that happens, which I think will happen one day, I want to take him with one of my last picks in the best ball drafts. You're getting this guy 200th overall. He's going to be you can get him on the waivers in your regular Worldwide Leader, Yahoo, sleeper season-long league with your buddies. You can get him for free. You don't even have to use a draft pick on him. But an underdog, you could pick him in the 17th, 18th round and just stash him, hope for the best as your tight end 3 or 4. I think he'll be a red zone demon. His contested catch ability is tremendous. There was a catch he made last year against Kansas City. I was like, wow. I mean, this is against the Chiefs, one of the top teams in the league, and you saw right there, it's like this guy has potential. He just got to be a little more consistent, and also get some love on the targets, man. So hopefully, the ball could work his way. Very strong hands at the catch point, which is a very important trait for tight ends. So overall, I don't really see Ja'Tavion with a big yardage production this year, just because I don't know what the target share is going to be in Carolina with McMillan coming into the picture. And it's just a guy that I can't, you don't want to bet on this guy. I'm not saying draft this guy and make him your tight end 1. Honestly, in season long, probably just keep an eye out for him on the waivers. But I talked about him last because I think in those best ball drafts, you're looking for that, that deep sleeper 17th to 18th round, like in 2023, how I was pretty much touting McBride as that guy. I think Ja'Tavion Sanders can have potential, emphasize potential, to be that sort of player. So just circle him, write his name down, and then maybe we'll circle back at the end of the year if he does have any production. But there you have it, guys. Those are my 5 tight ends that I believe have potential to be breakout players that you can get in those late rounds for absolutely nothing and possibly get a big time return. So if you like the video, comment below which player you like and why do you like them, so we can interact and go back and forth. And if you have a guy on the list or that wasn't on the list and you want to let me know, go ahead. I mean, I probably heard of him. It's just I didn't talk about him in this episode. So feel free to interact down below, guys. Keep an eye out. A month from now, the 2025 Showtime Draft Board will be coming out, and details will be coming out on that within the next couple weeks. So make sure you stay tuned for that. This will be the guide to get you guys all caught up on the drafts. This will have player reports, player profiles, projections, my updated draft board throughout the entire training camp, throughout August, with updates that I'm getting on these guys, injuries, stuff like that. So you'll have it all covered right here for a very, very low price. So make sure you guys stay tuned, because this channel will get you paid. Bottom line. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.